Something a bit lighter this time around, a bright and quirky little comedy about serial killing and decapitation, The Blood-Soaked Curdled. Gabriella is a Colombian immigrant living in Miami. She has a fascination with true crime and murder and gets a job at a specialist cleaning service that cleans up crime scenes after the police forensic teams have investigated. She becomes especially intrigued by the Blue Blood Killer, a local serial killer who decapitates his victims, and before long she finds herself cleaning up the scene of one of his murders. This particular murder, however, has gone awry, the victim managing to write the killer's name in permanent ink before dying. The killer returns to the scene to remove the evidence and a showdown ensues, with hilarious consequences in true sitcom fashion. Curdled, directed in 1996 by Webb Braddock, started life as a short film made 5 years earlier. Quentin Tarantino saw the short and was so impressed he used his production company, A Band Apart, to produce it as a feature. He also used lead actress Angela Jones to play a very similar bit part in Pulp Fiction. The film also makes reference to Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn, a TV crime show mentions the Gecko brothers, noting their mysterious disappearance. But despite the parallels, this film is very different in style and tone to Tarantino's work. Though the jet-black comedy is subtle and deadpan, the film has a bright and quirky feel to it, complete with hip Latin soundtrack. Loosely plotted, the film has a breezy, unhurried quality that is quite unlike the creeping tension its slasher plotline would suggest. In fact, with its bright colour palette and animated performance from Angela Jones, the film Curdled reminds me of is Amelie, though it's a somewhat twisted sibling. The film hangs on Jones's performance, and she carries the weight with effortless charm, constantly likeable despite, or perhaps because of, her morbid preoccupations. The film doesn't attempt to explain her macabre fascination, instead establishing it as a lifelong trait. This also helps to reinforce the essential innocence of her character. Her curiosity is childlike, her scrapbook covered in doodles. One of her work colleagues describes her as being like a little girl. In one scene, her boyfriend makes an offering of a crime story newspaper clipping as a romantic gift.
I brought it for your scrapbook. See, it's the man on the boat in Biscayne Bay. I don't know if you already have this one.
No, I don't. Thank you. Thanks.
The killer is played with uninspired but competent smoothness by one of the Baldwins. The film makes a passable attempt to dissect his character, although it's a half-hearted effort, especially compared to the nuanced construction of the film's heroine. The film undermines the killer's competence throughout, a contrast to the standard convention of the all-powerful slasher, a barely glimpsed creature of nightmares that cannot be stopped. This is a killer who not only allows a victim to write his name on the floor in permanent ink, but actually manages to accidentally lock himself in the wine cellar at the crime scene when he sneaks back to try and wash it off. But the real insights into his character and motives are reserved for the final confrontation with Gabriella. There was a wonderfully cinematic dark sequence, Gabriella piecing together the victim's last struggle with the killer, unaware that he is now watching her. Their banter in the final confrontation is a fine balancing act. Fear and tension. She's under genuine threat, and yet she still can't help being intrigued by him. She reenacts the murder scene at the killer's behest, uncovering the clues and getting into his head, her explanation heading ever closer to the murder itself. It's a loaded scene, funny but threatening. It's as though her fascination and insight will save her, a thought that's contrasted to the Pandora's box element of the tale. It is, after all, her fascination that has brought her here, putting her into jeopardy in the first place, though ultimately it's the villain's incompetence that is his undoing.
Do they talk?
What?
The heads.
What do you mean?
When you cut them.
It's the face. It's in their
Yes, but after that, sometimes the head says some words.
The head doesn't know. No.
They're supposed to talk.
The fact that the film was expanded from a short is perhaps reflected in the slow plotting, everything built around a single scenario. On the whole, it doesn't come across as padding, though the plot does feel somewhat contrived to direct it to the final sequence. But the film is pulled off with such charm and wit that it's hard not to forgive it. Despite the lightness of tone, the film pulls no punches when it comes to the gruesome reality of the work at hand. There are buckets of blood to be mopped up, and the gore is treated with a workaday casualness. The mechanics of the cleaning job were established with an eye for detail that suggests an insider's knowledge of the business, and it has to be said, the concept is a fascinating one. This does seem to be an underutilised subject for drama. Curdled is Braddock's only feature, which is a shame because it's highly enjoyable. On the whole, a great looking film, oddly charming and wickedly funny. Though there could be complaints that the final twist is too heavily signposted, I think that's missing the point somewhat. If you can't see what's coming, then you really haven't been paying attention. A brief word on the DVD releases. If anyone's thinking about purchasing this film, then it's worth checking out the different editions. The UK release has none of the special features that the US edition has, such as commentary, the original short, a dance rehearsal, deleted scenes and trailers, and various other bits and bobs.
That's just about the sickest thing I've ever seen.